Take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
CBS News, 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
Just get your popcorn and get ready.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go down. Yeah, boy!
He is focused and actually fixated on his grievances, on himself, and on dividing our country.
Let's get back to policies that are going to lower the cost of groceries, lower the cost of gasoline, and make the American dream affordable again. Let's get back to the leadership of Donald J. Trump.
With the comments that happened yesterday, I finally said, no, I have to be in the right side of the history.
Every demographic, every walk of life, they want change. They understand that Donald Trump is the candidate of change. He's the guy that can fix these things.
Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. This election, and make no mistake, we are already deep into it, is no garden party. You've probably heard about the Madison Square Garden Trump rally and the quote-unquote jokes told there, jokes that Republicans in competitive races are now falling all over themselves to denounce as racist. But did you hear this?
Who's going to stand up for our daughters? Who's going to stand up for the girls of America, the women of America, the families of America? Who's going to stand up and say the cartels are gone, the criminal migrants are gone, the gangs are gone, America is for Americans and Americans only?
Who is an American? Who gets to have the American dream? And who will decide?
What he did last night is not a discovery. It is just more of the same and maybe more vivid than usual. Donald Trump spends full time trying to have Americans point their finger at each other, fans the fuel of hate and division, and that's why people are exhausted with him.
Voters are making up their minds right now. 45 million ballots have already been cast. That is roughly 28% of the entire 2020 election turnout. And as this has been going on, as you may have heard, fires have been set inside ballot drop boxes. That has happened in Arizona, Oregon, and Washington. The Department of Homeland Security today issued a warning about extremists online openly discussing attacking election workers or sabotaging ballot boxes. This election, as I just said, no garden party. The campaigns continue to move and move rapidly through the battleground states, and that is where we begin. I want to go to Nicole Killian, who's with former President Trump in Georgia, and Ed O'Keefe, who is traveling with Vice President Harris in Michigan. Nicole, let me start with you. The last night's rally in Madison Square Garden is coming under some form of criticism from both parties. What's been the campaign response?
Well, some form of criticism, I think, puts it mildly, because we have heard a widespread condemnation all the way from President Biden to Vice President Harris to many of the former president's GOP allies, particularly in Congress, whether that is Rick Scott, Marco Rubio, some of the New York Republicans who are in very tough races there outside of Madison Square Garden, like Anthony Esposito, who said that he is a proud Puerto Rican, but disagrees with some of the comments that were made at the rally last night. But look, the Trump campaign has made clear that it didn't vet these comments or these comedians' jokes before he went on stage. And an official did tell us in a statement that this does not reflect the views of the former president or the Trump campaign.
And I want to go to you. What are you hearing from the vice president, and what has the campaign, if anything, made of the events in Madison Square Garden yesterday?
Hang up and dial back again.
Major, if you're trying to talk to me, unfortunately, I can't hear you right now, so why don't you ask Nicole another question?
Okay. I will do that right now. Nicole, for the audience's benefit, in case you haven't seen it, I just want to play one of the quote-unquote jokes told at the Trump rally in Madison Square Garden. Control room, let's run that.
Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
So, Nicole, you said the campaign is trying to distance itself from that. Does it in toto believe that the rally in Madison Square Garden was to its benefit, meaning worth more than all the negative blowback that's occurred in the ensuing hours?
Well, for those here in the crowd here in Georgia, which is quite far from Madison Square Garden, they view last night's rally as a hit. We just heard from Marjorie Taylor Greene, the congresswoman from Georgia, who tried to spin the events of last night, saying that, while liberals and Democrats may be offended, she is offended, and the crowd here should be offended by Democrats' policies over the last decade plus, that they should be offended that Democrats have referred to former President Trump as a fascist or at times as Hitler. So from her standpoint, she believes that it's Republicans who should be offended and continues to insist, as many speakers here on stage have, that, the rally last night was a huge success.
It's also worth pointing out that on more than one occasion, the former president, that is to say former President Trump, has referred to Vice President Harris as a communist and a fascist. Georgia, you're there, Nicole. What's the atmosphere? What is the campaign ground game there and expectations for them in Georgia?
Well, I think what's interesting, Major, is we're here at the campus of Georgia Tech. And so, this is a college campus. I was just with the former president over the weekend when he was at Penn State. And he has visited a few other campuses as well, trying to really appeal to young voters, in particular young men. We heard from the president over the weekend in a very long, probably one of his longest interviews yet, with podcaster Joe Rogan, which racked up millions of views. But it really is a strategy on the part of the Trump campaign to try to micro-target some of these demographics, whether it's young voters, whether it's young men. And the Harris campaign, for its part, has done a similar outreach and strategy to similar demographics and other demographics as well. So this is kind of part of the new normal of both campaigns, really kind of going after those smaller niche audiences, because, as you know, any demographic could potentially shift the election. And in terms of the significance of Georgia, as you very well know, Major, this is a critical battleground state. Obviously, a lot of people remember what happened here in Georgia in 2020, where the former president asked then Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find him the votes, which really set off a firestorm, if you will, in the sense that the former president ultimately was indicted for alleged election interference, along with a number of co-defendants. So for the Trump campaign, they certainly would like to get this state back in their column. But that being said, this is now, to a certain extent, a purple state. Some still think it's red and want to keep it red. But after President Biden flipped the state in 2020, Democrats certainly want to hold on to it, particularly after those two Senate victories with Senator Ossoff and Warnock. So there is quite a battle here on the ground in Georgia, and that's why the former president continues to come here time and again.
Nicole Killian, thank you. We have great hopes that our communications with Ed O'Keefe at least have been partially restored. Ed, you had a chance to talk to Debbie Dingle, who knows a fair amount about election politics in Michigan. What did she tell you?
She told us, Major, that she's been begging the Harris campaign to come specifically to Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's in the 6th district of Michigan, and she points out there were more Democratic votes in this part of the state in the last few statewide competitive elections than any other, and she needs to be spending more time here. Take a listen.
Most people don't realize that the 6th congressional district has more Democratic votes since the redistricting than any district in the state.
Really?
We had more Democratic votes in 2022, more Biden votes in the primary, more uncommitted votes than the Dearborn district, et cetera, and then more Democratic votes in the primary.
Can she win?
I'm going to tell you, neither candidate has won. I am Debbie determined, and I'd rather be in our shoes than his shoes right now.
It was around this time 8 years ago, Major, you'll remember that she was warning that Hillary Clinton could lose Michigan, and then she did. And she pointed out there that she doesn't know quite who's going to win because it is that close. One thing to watch for here tonight on the outskirts of the campus of the University of Michigan, what kind, if any, protest is there regarding the war in the Middle East? Remember, there are hundreds of thousands of Arab or Muslim Americans who live in and around Detroit, and they've made it a big cause of concern for them because they know so many who've died, friends and neighbors, or their friends and neighbors have friends and relatives who died in that conflict, and they're holding it against the Biden administration and, by extension, the vice president. Let's see if she talks about it tonight and how she responds to any interruptions.
Ed O'Keefe, thank you very much. Also, our thanks to Nicole Killian coming to us from Georgia. I want an invitation to you. Watch our election night coverage with the entire CBS News team live from our election headquarters in New York, and with our teams who will be spread out across the country. Join us for real-time results, analysis, and, of course, exclusive polling. Coverage starts at 4 p.m. Eastern on CBS News 24/7 and 7 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Former President Trump says Chinese leader Xi Jinping would treat Vice President Harris, quote, like a baby, unquote, if she were elected. We'll show you how Harris responded to this during an exclusive CBS News interview with Norah O'Donnell. That's next. You're streaming America Decides.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal. That's right.
Let me see if you can find me.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices.
You can't write a better script.
Yeah, boy.
It's gonna be a ride.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 miles an hour. This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football tonight?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back. It's great to have you with us. In an exclusive interview, Vice President Harris told CBS News Evening News anchor and managing editor Norah O'Donnell that a second Trump term could be, quote, perilous for the country's national security. Let's listen.
As Vice President, you know China is our long-term strategic threat. Donald Trump was asked about this yesterday. He said that Xi Jinping would bully you. He would treat you like a baby. In his words, he said it would be like a grand chess master playing a beginner. We would lose our country or be in World War III.
Again, let's look at what Donald Trump did. He sold advanced chips to China. Donald Trump, who admires dictators, who has sent love letters between himself and Kim Jong-un, who praises Vladimir Putin for attacking Ukraine, who sends Vladimir Putin during the height of the pandemic COVID tests when Americans couldn't get their hands on them, secretly sends them to the president of Russia for his personal use. I think that Donald Trump's word is actually meaningless when it comes to national security. And again, don't take my word for it. Listen to his former generals, national security advisors. In fact, hundreds of national security experts, many of whom work for Donald Trump, are endorsing and supporting me because they know what a threat he is to America's security.
On that issue of Russia and Vladimir Putin, there are reports that Elon Musk, who maintains a security clearance and has billions of dollars in contracts, military contracts with our Pentagon, has been in regular contact with Vladimir Putin. Should this be investigated?
I'll let others address that. I'm right now focused on what we need to do to secure and protect our democracy, what we need to do to uplift the American people, what we need to do to bring down costs, cut taxes, and focus on the strength and the future of America and not take us backward.
But should the American people be concerned about some of the contacts that are happening? We've learned recently, according to Bob Woodward, that Donald Trump has stayed in contact with Vladimir Putin.
I think that the words in particular of experts in national security, those who have served at the highest levels in our military, that those words should be taken seriously. Yes.
CBS News anchor and managing editor Norah O'Donnell joins me now at the table. Great to have you with us.
Great to be here.
Congratulations on the interview. Your impressions about those exchanges, about national security and Elon Musk?
Well, she seemed reluctant to fully answer the question, in part because I think of some sensitive intelligence and national security matters. The question about how often Elon Musk has been speaking with Vladimir Putin, and at the same time, Elon Musk spending millions of dollars in support of Donald Trump.
75 million and counting.
That's right. This also comes when the lead of the Evening News on Friday night was that the Chinese have targeted and tried to get into the phones of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. I also asked her, were you targeted? She didn't want to answer that question. Again, I think in that instance, for national security reasons. But notably, on that very question of China and whether she would be treated like a baby, in the words of Donald Trump, you see how she pushed back. And it's the same message she had today while visiting a semiconductor plant in Saginaw, Michigan, arguing that Donald Trump, when he was president, actually sent the Chinese advanced technology, advanced chips that they are using to support their U.S. military. What you see essentially Kamala Harris trying to do today as she's walking the assembly line is trying to put a dent in that argument that Donald Trump would be better on the economy.
Norah, you've covered a lot of presidential campaigns. You were with the vice president in Houston. The interview was in Michigan. Your impressions of what you saw, the internals of her campaign, and how she's approaching the finish line.
That's right. This is my 8th presidential race. The polls show this neck and neck. It's hard to decipher which way this contest is going to go. And so I think we're all trying to figure out what is it that we don't see in those polls. I did ask her, do you feel like the race is slipping away from you? Because some of the momentum, at least in the polls, could be heading towards Donald Trump. She said, no, I see a lot of enthusiasm. I see a lot of momentum out there. You'll see tonight what her answer is when I say, do you wish you'd had more time on the campaign trail to make your argument, because it's only been 90 days for her. And I got a sense that maybe they feel like they haven't had enough time to have their message seep in. My own impressions is that certainly in the rallies that we were at, 30,000 in Houston, Texas, a red state, that is her largest rally to date. Powerful, a lot of enthusiasm from first-time voters, men and women. There were a lot of black men there as well. Then, to Kalamazoo, Michigan, where they call it Kamala Zoo, Michigan. Met with a woman in her 60s who voted for Donald Trump in 2016. She's voting for Kamala Harris. Met another woman on the rope line who said, yes, there's a lot of women she knows, Republican women, who are silently going to vote for Kamala Harris. You see the Democrats putting out an ad today, or Democratic aligned groups putting out an ad today, voiced by Julia Roberts, saying, wink, wink, nod, nod. Nobody knows it's a private vote. You can do what you want. You don't have to tell anybody. Right. That's a message Michelle Obama also delivered from the stage in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So if Kamala Harris wants to win, she will have to turn out first-time voters, young people. She will have to get the vote of the undecideds, and she will have to get some of these women. She will have to overperform with women.
A gender gap that is not only noteworthy, but possibly determinative.
No doubt.
Norah O'Donnell, thank you so very much.
Thanks for having me.
President Trump's got a tremendous amount of momentum. He can pull a crowd anywhere. You know, Manhattan is 90% registered Democrats.
Straight ahead, more reaction from Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden rally and what his surrogates are telling CBS News. That's next. You're streaming America Decides.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor. Hey. Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People are going to let their voices be heard. We're going to take this country back.
You don't need to be told what to think. You just need the facts. And you're here because you have the facts, right?
This is the kind of positive energy that America is all about.
Welcome back to America Decides. That was just some of what was heard at former President Trump's campaign rally yesterday at Madison Square Garden. I want to bring in Robert Costa, who was there. Robert, your impressions of what you saw, some 6 hours worth, correct?
That's right, Major. I was at Madison Square Garden. It's usually a place I go to see concerts, and this was a political rally. Now, it's been a site of Democratic conventions, Republican conventions in years past. You think about Jimmy Carter, George W. Bush, Al Gore, Bill Clinton, 1992. Don't stop believing. But this was about Donald Trump. And to me, watching this after covering Trump for many years, as you have, and written about him, this was about Trump trying to stoke his base ahead of the election. It wasn't about trying to play in deep blue New York. It was about having some excitement, some political electricity. But there's a cost, potentially, to that, because now Democrats are trying to amplify the comments made by some of the other speakers. Right.
And the former president and his campaign have to take responsibility for the whole thing. They knew there would be eyes on. They asked for eyes on this event. It's Madison Square Garden. They wanted lots of attention. Well, they got it. Not all of it welcome.
And it's a sign of how this campaign has been running. Trump, in terms of the inner circle of his campaign, a lot less drama than we've seen in campaigns past. But there's a bit of a looseness to the entire Trump movement. It brings in these podcast hosts, comedians, friends of Donald Trump Jr. It's not a tight ship in terms of the mechanics of the campaign and the messaging. It's Trump himself driving the message as ever.
Speaking of Donald Trump Jr., you spoke with him. I'd like to play a little bit of that exchange. Let's listen.
What's the sense of things inside the campaign, inside the Trump family? How confident is the inner circle?
You know what, it feels really good. I'm on the ground. I'm all over the place. I'm in all of the swing states. And I'm just seeing it's not just the guy in the MAGA hat anymore that's coming up to me. And I don't mean at rallies. I mean at airports on the way. People, they notice it. They understand that Donald Trump is the candidate of change. He's the guy that can fix these things. And they're being very vocal about it.
That's really crucial for the Trump campaign to be, or to reclaim, if Vice President Harris had it for any period of time, that he's the change agent, that he's the alternative. That's kind of one of the areas in which this election is going to be decided.
It really is. And I think Donald Trump Jr. is speaking to the Trump campaign's attempt to make overtures to labor, to families who are aligned in any way with the labor movement in the industrial Midwest or the South. If the Trump campaign can really make inroads with a labor voter who is unhappy with border policy, feels economic pain in their own life, whether it's inflation or their savings, if Trump can get that person who might be a traditional Democrat to come along, he could win this election. Meanwhile, the Democrats are looking at traditional Republicans and seeing some softness there for Trump, not just the Liz Cheney, anti-Trump types, but with the more business-friendly Republicans who might not like Trump's conduct on January 6th. That's why Harris, the vice president, is bringing attention to that.
One of those kind of pro-business Republicans, not as MAGA as others. Doug Burgum, the Republican governor of North Dakota, one of the many vanquished Republican rivals one time to former President Trump. You also talked to him at Madison Square Garden. His presence there is suggestive of a combining of forces. Let's listen to the governor.
Well, there's been a long history of rock stars appearing at Madison Square Garden from a concert standpoint, but also rock star athletes with the Knicks and the Rangers. And then you go back, I mean, 2004, this is the Republican National Convention was here. So it's got a political history, it's got an athletic history, it's got an entertainment history, but President Trump is a unique figure in American politics of all times. And for him, in essentially his hometown, to come here at the close of his campaign, the comeback kid when people said it could never happen. Here he is on the cusp of winning election.
Well, he may or may not be on the cusp of winning an election, but he is a product of New York and playing the Garden. Come on. That had to feel for Trump as a kind of apex moment in his political career, whatever the outcome of the election.
And he's a son of New York, but just quickly, the appearance of Burgum is significant in the sense that Trump needs that type of Republican to come out next week. He needs the traditional Republican, the business-friendly Wall Street type to stay with him despite all of his character questions, the conduct, and the comedians on stage.
Robert Costa, thank you very much. New CBS News polling has the presidential race, guess what, in a dead heat. Next, our chief pollster, Anthony Salvanto, takes us inside the significant gender gaps separating the two candidates. That and other topics next. You are streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party? Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024? Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. New CBS News polling finds a 21-point gender gap in this presidential race. That is the largest we have seen all year. Vice President Harris leads with women by 12 points. Former President Trump leads with men by 9 points. You put those together, that's how you get 21. I did the math myself. I want to bring in our CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, your friend and mine, Anthony Salvanto. Larger themes, not just on gender and race. Walk us through the data, Anthony.
That is right, because, look, campaigns are about candidates, they're about policies, but they also reflect these larger societal forces and what people feel about them. And the gender gap is just one of those examples. So take a look at this. We've asked this for a while. How do you feel about gender equality efforts in the U.S.? And you see plenty of women say they're not going far enough. You say plenty of men who say that they're going too far. But look at how that splits to vote, Major. If you look at the folks who say that they're going too far, it's 84% who are voting for Donald Trump. But if you look at them, and I showed you, a lot of women say this, that those gender equality efforts aren't going far enough, overwhelmingly for Kamala Harris. That connection to vote tells you that views on those larger forces are associated with how people are voting in this campaign. And that is just one example and one of the drivers behind that gender gap, Major.
And any in particular data revelations about race as opposed to gender in this election?
Well, yes. In fact, you can look at the same idea on the topic of efforts to promote racial diversity. And when you see people who say that those efforts are going too far, look at that same kind of correlation. 86% of them voting for Donald Trump. whereas the folks who say that those efforts aren't going far enough, 85% of them for Harris. So again, these societal forces and how people view them are clearly in the mix, clearly part of this campaign, Major.
Anthony Salvanto, as always, thank you very much. I want to turn now to our reporter panel. Margaret Talib is a senior contributor for Axios, and as well, she's a director for Syracuse University's Institute for Democracy, Journalism, and Citizenship. Vin Gomez, as you all know, our CBS News political director. I want to play for both of you a new ad that was referred to earlier in the show, the voiceover from Julia Roberts. Let's play it.
In the one place in America where women still have a right to choose, you can vote any way you want, and no one will ever know.
Did you make the right choice?
Sure did, honey.
Remember, what happens in the booth stays in the booth.
Margaret, did you make the right choice, honey? Sure did.
Pretty provocative. I'm actually going to tease some polling we haven't released yet, so hopefully no one at Axios will kill me. But we have some polling that's coming out later this week with the Harris poll that actually examines what share of voters say their vote is private and what share of voters say they lie. And I'll just tell you, the numbers were much higher than I thought on that second question, and the way it breaks down is also very interesting. But you sort of wonder. And
also important to note, Harris, not the Harris campaign poll, but a Harris poll, a separate polling institute. Yes.
Good. Thank you for pointing that out. Not affiliated with Vice President Harris's campaign. This is a major polling outfit called the Harris poll.
Yes.
But, I think two things. One, is Julia Roberts going to be to women what Joe Rogan is to men? I don't know. Maybe if it was 20 years ago. We'll see if it has that kind of massive impact. But what you and Anthony were just talking about, if abortion and reproductive rights were to be the issue on which most Americans are most concerned and voting about, former President Trump would be in a lot of trouble right now. But poll after poll shows us that even women who care deeply about abortion issues also care deeply about inflation and their ability to put food on the table and pay for things. And so I think despite all of the really interesting strategy behind that ad, what Vice President Harris's biggest challenge remains is that doesn't answer questions about inflation and the economy.
Speaking of inflation, Finn, before I get to you, let's play a new Trump ad on that very topic.
Inflation destroyed the lives of so many people. Interest rates went from 2% to 10%. Millions of illegal immigrants, traffickers, and drugs coming into our country. Our country has gone to hell. So I made a decision to run.
I made a decision to run because things were so desperately bad. This playing off not only anxiety or unhappiness with the current state of economic affairs, but basking Trump in the idea that he is somehow coming to save the country.
Right, and I think that, I think it falls with the theme, the thematics that we've seen coming from Donald Trump this entire election cycle. Look, there are two issues that he's been focusing on from the onset here, and it's been inflation and immigration. He said so last night at the Madison Square Garden rally, MSG rally, and he did say, even though he is pushing on this economic message pretty emphatically, that immigration is the most important issue. And it all ties back to that. I mean, the Trump campaign tells me they think that they can win if they're talking about immigration, even with women voters, suburban moms, some of these tactics, including, the rise in crime, his emphasis on focusing on, the gang activity and, Aurora and other places. It's all a method to appeal to that voter. And they feel that they can make inroads in the suburban homes. It's kind of a wait-and-see approach to see what happens, if that is effective. And I do think, by the way, that Julia Roberts ad is very effective. But I think the most effective message I've heard in the last few days, I think, has been former First Lady Michelle Obama.
Speaking of Michelle Obama, you just led me right to what I want to do. I want to play this soundbite because I think it's noteworthy from the former First Lady about the conversation, not just about former President Trump, but about VP Harris. Let's listen.
I hope you'll forgive me if I'm a little frustrated that some of us are choosing to ignore Donald Trump's gross incompetence while asking Kamala to dazzle us at every turn. I hope that you'll forgive me if I'm a little angry that we are indifferent to his erratic behavior, his obvious mental decline, his history as a convicted felon. All of this while we pick apart Kamala's answers from interviews that he doesn't even have the courage to do, y'all.
Margaret, there's a lot going on in that, what Michelle Obama talked about, the sort of invisible barrier that a woman has to cross over to become president of the United States, getting picked on for all sorts of other things while the man can have kind of free reign or less critical observations, and other things are playing out in that conversation that Michelle Obama was having with the audience.
Yeah, it's called the double standard. Every woman in the universe is familiar with the double standard, but do you move behavior by highlighting the double standard or by implicitly telling people that they're making the wrong choice if they vote for the other candidate? I think it's a bit of a gamble. I mean, I think it will land with some people, and it will certainly land with people who would vote for Harris anyway if they were going to turn out. As a turnout tactic, it may be successful. As a persuasion tactic, I'm not so sure. And I'll say in the closing week, the one thing that continues to surprise me is of all the compare Harris to Trump instead of Harris to herself, and all those arguments, the one argument that I really haven't heard the Harris campaign making is that if for people who are putting all of their bets on the idea that Trump will somehow reverse inflation or change the economy, that there's no guarantee that that will happen, that the economy may be bigger than any individual president. To me, that's been sort of a blind spot in the campaign. I don't know if that argument would work, but it's certainly an argument that you would expect to have heard by now. And instead, you hear about January 6th, you hear about abortion rights, you hear about cultural issues. But on this one issue that voters say is most animating them, which is, can the inflation get under control? Who can get it under control? You just don't hear the Harris campaign saying Donald Trump can't get it under control and we can. And I'm waiting to see whether you hear that argument in the last week of the campaign, but I haven't heard it very much.
We will certainly hear more about January 6th tomorrow in a speech the Vice President delivers right here in Washington, D.C. Margaret Talev, Finn Gomez, thank you very much. Derogatory comments directed at Puerto Rico from Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. Well, they've sparked outrage on both sides of the aisle. We'll have more on that next. Your Streaming America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now. We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time. Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Nations are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen.
She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. The Trump campaign is trying to distance itself from disparaging remarks made at the Madison Square Garden rally, where a comedian, so-called, referred to Puerto Rico as, quote, a floating island of garbage. Comment is also drawing criticism from some Republicans. Florida Senator Rick Scott, who's in a campaign re-election mode, was among them, saying, quote, this joke bombed for a reason. It's not funny and it's not true. Puerto Ricans are amazing people and amazing Americans. Chuck Rocha and Brian Lanza join us now. Chuck is a Democratic strategist who, back in the day, senior advisor for Bernie Sanders' 2016 and 2020 presidential campaigns. Brian Lanza, right now, senior advisor for the Trump campaign. So, Brian, let me start with you. Net, the Madison Square Garden rally a success or more damaging than it was worth?
Well, listen, I think it ultimately was a success. If you look at what the undecided voter is looking for, they're looking to see the final message going into President Trump. As where some people are talking about, some of the jokes that were taking place, the vast majority of people are talking about that closing message. It's inflation, it's economy, it's immigration, and those are the issues we're going to talk to at the end. We have a plan to address those, and that's the message we're going to be going forward, as opposed to Kamala Harris, who has no closing message other than she broke it and Trump will fix it.
Chuck.
I could disagree a little bit with my good friend Brian. I think his message of hate and dissent last night got in the way of his message of hate and dissent. But that's just my opinion. But look, the big thing last night in the Latino community was this comment you said about Puerto Rico. And look, I've been running campaigns a long time, and normally I would understand what the campaign's positions are. They walk back the statement, but I think the damage was done. And there's one thing about this that I've been saying is that Puerto Ricans are a different breed of Latino, and I mean that with all due respect to my Puerto Rican friends and brothers and sisters, is when you talk about their island, whether you're joking or not, and I myself might have made that mistake once or twice, you don't joke about their island, and I think this does have some effect.
Listen, I would add that this was a third party that made the joke. This wasn't President Trump. This wasn't the campaign. This wasn't J.D. Vance. Whereas opposed when we have the same day that took place, you had the Governor Walz, part of the Harris ticket, said that people who were attending this rally were Nazi supporters and were Nazis. I'm sorry, we had a Holocaust survivor there. We had a Holocaust survivor there that the governor of Minnesota is calling a Nazi. That is offensive, and that is a direct statement from the campaign, not some third party. That's offensive.
The Trump campaign is in part responsible for the entire program, though, is it not? And you knew there'd be eyes on this rally. You wanted eyes on this rally. You got eyes on this rally.
Yeah, we got a lot of eyes.
Should have been tighter, shouldn't it?
Yeah, listen, you can control as much as you can control, but when a comic decides to ad-lib, you're sort of stuck at what he says.
But do you think within the atmosphere and within Trump rhetoric, that comic felt that he wasn't actually going out of bounds?
I mean, listen, if that's the case, a lot of comics are going out of bounds, whether they're comics supportive of President Trump or comics supportive of Kamala Harris. Comics constantly go out of bounds. And so to try to hold a campaign accountable for a comic going out of bounds, I'm sure we have a long list of comics who have offended people.
Okay, Chuck, it's just artistic license. Come on, what are you making a big deal about? I put together a lot
of these rallies, and I'm not going to hold somebody to what something a comic said to a campaign, but you got to have a tighter handle over this when you're running a campaign like this for President of the United States. But I'll set that to the side and go back to the American people have a choice last night. Whether it was a great rally or not a great rally, I think the rally speaks for itself, and I think that it does have some effect. We're in the last bit here. I said this to somebody earlier. I was like, look, normally this don't really matter. Quote, unquote, it's baked in. But folks have ballots now. And I was thinking about 600,000 Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania have ballots in their hands. And I think that it matters when folks are texting them like we did this morning. We text that to every Puerto Rican in Pennsylvania. That's my job. I'm a strategist. It's something I can use to tell Puerto Ricans there's a difference in these campaigns.
Quick question to both of you. Would it, under normal circumstances, have been permissible or within the campaign's responsibility to clear the remarks beforehand?
And we did. Listen, that is always
comedians?
Absolutely. We had to make edits to some of the speeches in the past, and we continue to do that at all our rallies, and we're going to continue to do it forward. We hear what people say, we review some of the things, and yeah, sometimes you have to make edits. So
the set that the comedian presented was not the set that he delivered?
Correct.
What does that tell you?
That tells you the comedian goes out of bounds all the time. You really can't control comedians. But what you can control is what your closing message is in the final weeks of the campaign. And the closing message for this campaign is focus on the economy and focus on immigration.
So, Chuck, talk to me about that, because there is a sense, maybe among some reporters who just don't know how else to get around this, but it's even showing up in polling data that the closing message of the two campaigns is sharper for Trump than it is for Harris. How would you evaluate that?
Trump should be winning this race by 60 points based off of what we know about everything that's went on in the last 4 years. As a strategist, when you're running against an incumbent whose economy may not be as good as it was 4 years before, that's all you have to say, and he should be 70-30 winning. And it was almost that when Joe Biden was the president. Every advantage is in their favor. I'll give that to my good friend Brian. Like, there's no doubt. But what gets in the way of that message is what you saw last night. If we just ran on that message, he'd be kicking all of our butts.
Brian?
Listen, I think the biggest advantage that the Harris campaign
should Trump be farther ahead, like he was when it was Trump against Biden?
Listen, when it was Trump against Biden before the debate, it was only a couple points race, and we are sort of within the margin of error. But what I would say this, I think the biggest advantage that the Harris campaign has the media. You know, they're the ones who are sort of filtering what seems to be the most important thing. Like I said, I just mentioned on this show, yesterday Tim Walz called a Holocaust survivor a Nazi for attending the rally. Nobody's talking about that. Here we had a third-party candidate, a third-party jokester tell a joke that fell flat, that the campaign said doesn't reflect our values, and we're talking about that. We're 3 minutes into that conversation and 30 seconds in Tim Walz, and that's why the media and that's why Harris has the campaign, has the advantage.
Look, I understand what Brian's doing. The campaign should be doing it. They want to pick out one thing that's different in what's happened last night. It's called spin, and I get that, right? And that's part of what we're doing.
That's offensive is what it is.
What it is called GNC, which is good and crazy. Good and crazy is what you saw last night, and I don't think that's what you should be in this campaign on.
So, last minute or so, very quickly, Brian, give me a sense of the Trump ground game and the Harris ground game from you, Chuck. Go ahead, Brian.
Listen, it's full steam ahead. We've worked with outside groups. We've raised a lot of money for it. The outside groups are showing the data coming forward. We've seen some of the early votes. Look in Nevada. For the first time in a long time, Republicans are leading the early vote in Nevada. Look at Arizona. So, you know, we're happy with the progress we've made with the third parties. They're going to continue to focus, and we're very happy with our GOTV operation.
Chuck Rocha, you know what he meant, third parties. That means outside, not inside the building.
Harris has 51 offices in Pennsylvania. Donald Trump has 23. We're going to see whose game's better. Maybe they can do more with less. I don't think so.
Chuck Rocha, Brian Lanza, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it. Our CBS News polling shows most voters have, well, been dissatisfied with the economy of the country for some period of time. Does that perception match the economic reality? We'll take a look at that question next. To give you an answer, at least in part, your Streaming America decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this.
What is at stake here? What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis? You're not answering my question.
This really is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean? What does that mean in
English? Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good? Mm-hmm. Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Welcome back to America Decides. CBS News polling finds a majority of voters view the economy negatively, and those views, they tell us, could play a major factor, or maybe already has, in their vote, because some have voted early. But how is the economy actually performing? Let's take a look at one metric, gas prices. According to AAA, the current national average price of a gallon of gas, $3.13. That's a drop of 9 cents from last month, down 37 cents from a national average a year ago. Kate Davidson joins me now. She's the managing editor for U.S. economic policy for Bloomberg News. Kate, great to see you. Thanks for joining us. I saw on Bloomberg earlier today, Jamie Dimon knows a thing or two about the U.S. economy, says it's booming. Last week, the cover of The Economist magazine, envy of the world, describing the state of the U.S. economy. And yet, this persistent unease or flat-out dissatisfaction with how things are going. What explains that?
Well, I think the thing is that consumers and American voters, they remember what they were paying for things at the grocery store 4 or 5 years ago. It wasn't really that long ago. And so inflation is still very much present in their minds, even though the monthly and annual inflation figures have come down. So price growth has eased. Prices are still higher than then. So I think that plays a big role, even though, as you pointed out, gas prices may have come down. Certainly certain categories have fluctuated and some have improved. Broadly speaking, you're not going to see prices across the whole economy come down. That would be disinflation. That would actually be worrisome. That's not a great sign for a healthy economy. So we're still seeing some prices inch up, and overall, consumers are paying more than they were a few years ago, and they're just still not that happy about it.
And Kate, I'm a person of a certain age. I remember the 70s and 80s. Heavily inflationary times, much larger than they are now, higher interest rates then than now. But a lot of Americans have no memory of that. All they have memory of is low inflation, basically for all of their lives. And this spike really took them by surprise.
Sure. I think something else that's been surprising, though, it's worth pointing out, is that what we haven't seen, or we didn't see this time around, was the high unemployment that was required in the 70s and 80s to bring prices down. So that has been very unusual. Economists are still trying to unpack what exactly happened there, why that was. Does it have to do with a broader supply of workers and immigration? That's something that officials, for example, at the Federal Reserve have cited. So I think that, by comparison, again, this economy is doing pretty well. And I think we should consider ourselves pretty lucky that that price pressures have come down in the way they have without a bigger hit to the economy.
And we were just showing on the screen the unemployment rate, jobs created. Those things have been largely on the bullish side of the equation, continuing to create jobs. Wages have gone up, haven't kept pace with inflation throughout the entire Biden-Harris administration, but lately they've caught up and exceeded a little bit. That's providing some relief, but not nearly enough.
Sure, right. Things have gotten a bit better, and that isn't to say, right, that certain groups have really felt this pain. I think that there are starting to be some concerning signs among lower income groups about rising delinquency rates. But generally speaking, again, the American consumer has really continued to power this growth, and there have been, there's been a lot of prognostication about how much longer can it last. Surely next month we're going to see these numbers come down, and we see retail spending data, we see consumption data, it's just very, very strong, despite these very high interest rates that you mentioned.
And there's a kind of muddled picture of what the future looks like to consumers. So the Conference Board, I want to bring that up, has a consumer confidence index that went down for the month of September. And the University of Michigan has a consumer sentiment index that went up. So what's the difference, and how should we gauge where consumers think things are now and what they're imagining they'll be in the not too distant future?
Sure. Well, these measures are always very tricky because they are really tied to politics. They're increasingly partisan. They survey people who run the survey have found that Republicans are typically happier when there's a Republican president in the White House. Democrats have a better outlook when there's a Democrat. I think the most recent numbers from the Michigan survey, for example, showed that a big part of that pickup was because Republicans are more confident that Donald Trump will win the White House, and Democrats a little bit less confident in recent weeks. So I think it is hard to disentangle what it means for the future, and probably those measures are going to shift after Election Day for sure.
Measures are going to shift after Election Day in more ways than one. Kate Davidson, thank you very much for being with us. That does it for today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report on October 28th, 2024. I'm Lindsay Reiser. Tonight, the final sprint. The presidential candidates enter their last full week of campaigning. Vice President Kamala Harris